What if a rock band didn't just chase hits, but changed how music feels? Before arena anthems, before goth and post-punk mood, before today's cinematic pop, there was The Doors. They didn't just make songs, they rewired the sound of late 60s America, but behind the legend is a story of risk, obsession, and a cost almost nobody talks about. Tonight, we're not reciting greatest hits. We're tracing how a keyboard became the lead voice, how a poet became a frontman, and how a band bent radio to play 7-minute spells. From Los Angeles clubs to national TV to controversy that nearly ended it all, this is the blueprint modern artists still borrow, often without knowing. If you've ever felt a song turn the room into a scene from a film, you've met The Doors' shadow. Watch the pieces click, the organ drone that makes time slow, the flamenco-tinged guitar that flickers like heat on pavement, the jazz drummer who plays silence like it's an instrument, and a voice that reads like poetry but hits like weather. They take a city, L.A., and turn it into a character. They take an album and turn it into a night you can't forget. And every step forward has a price. Censorship fights, shows that spiral, fame that burns. The myth is bright, the backstage is darker. Maybe you first heard them on a long drive at 2 a.m. Maybe a movie used one song and it stopped your breath. You don't have to be a 60s purist to feel this. The Doors wired our playlist for mood. They taught rock to be cinematic, to hold a note until it becomes a room, a memory, a dare. Did the Doors change music because of their genius or because they were willing to cross lines others wouldn't? What did it take to push radio, labels, and audiences to accept the strange? And what did that push take from them? Before the #1 single, before the scandals, it started in a small room with 4 people and a pulse that felt new. What did they hear that no one else heard yet? Let's go back to 1965. In 1965, Los Angeles, music on the radio was tight and tidy. 3-minute singles ruled AM, British invasion hooks, surf afterglow, Motown polish, folk rock jangle. Behind closed doors, young Angelenos were living pressure, Vietnam on TV, the Watts uprising fresh in memory, curfews on the strip, club crackdowns, and labels guarding the gates. The Doors didn't fall out of a label meeting. They were built in film classrooms, tiny clubs, and rented rehearsal rooms by the beach. By the time anyone knew the name, the parts were already dangerous. Quick reality check. Meanwhile, across town, clubs like the Whiskey A Go-Go, London Fog, and the Hullabaloo packaged youth culture as clean nightlife. Bands made their case with tight sets and covers, hoping an A&R man happened to be there on the right night. Radio demanded neat intros and chorus by 45. If your song drifted or your singer spoke in riddles, you were art, which often meant unplayable. Hold that sound in your head. Now add this influence. Los Angeles in '65 wasn't just a music town, it was a movie town. At UCLA's film school, Ray Manzarek and Jim Morrison were marinating in montage theory, poetry, and the idea that sound could be cinema without pictures. Morrison devoured Rimbaud, Blake, and the Beats. Manzarek soaked up Chicago blues, jazz voicings, and classical shapes on keyboards. The idea wasn't just to make songs, it was to stage moods. Here's the piece almost everyone misses. There were 4 specific ingredients that made this band sound like nobody else. Ray Manzarek, the architect of atmosphere. Chicago raised, keyboard obsessed, he brought church organ gravity to club music. On stage, he played 2 keyboards at once. Organ with the right hand, Fender Rhodes piano bass with the left, so the band could be a trio plus a ghost bassist. That choice alone broke the standard rock lineup. Robbie Krieger, the colorist, A guitarist who came up admiring flamenco and modal music, he bent rock away from pentatonic cliches, slide work, minor mode riffs, and lyrical lines gave the music a hypnotic pull rather than a blues brawl. John Densmore, the air and the tension, a drummer grounded in jazz phrasing and world rhythms, he valued space and dynamics. He'd let the floor tom breathe, lean on the ride cymbal like rain, then snap into accents that felt like edits in a film. Jim Morrison, the poet as Voltage, a baritone voice that could whisper like a narrator and break like thunder. His lyrics read like myth and dream logic, cities as characters, love as a spell, endings as beginnings. On stage, he treated the mic like a ritual object. Improv, invocation, provocation, quick reality check. Meanwhile, across town, labels were signing safe bets, house bands played covers to keep bar owners happy. DIY meant you found time in a cheap studio and hoped the tape sounded like a real record. The ingredients meet the heat. Morrison and Manzarek reconnect on Venice Beach, trade ideas about building a band around poetry and pulse. Manzarek pulls in his early outfit, Rick and the Ravens, long enough to cut demos. Soon the chemistry tightens when Krieger and Densmore join, players who can live inside a drone and make it move. Rehearsals become experiments. Dorian modes, holding a single mood, drum accents, carving scenes. Morrison testing spoken passages that feel half confession, half spell. Hold that sound in your head. Now add this influence. They take a job as a house band. Long sets, thin pay, instant feedback from a room that either leans in or leaves. In that pressure, the band learns to stretch time. Intros that bloom slowly, solos that behave like conversations, endings that don't have to be neat. This is where the end stops being a song and becomes a night journey. Here's the piece almost everyone misses. The Doors cracked the code before they had permission. In 1966, as club doors opened and closed on them, Elektra's Jack Holtzman and producer Paul A. Rothschild heard the same thing the band heard, mood as the lead instrument. With engineer Bruce Botnick at Sunset Sound, tape became a camera, the room became a character, and the organ's bite sat right in front, not hidden under guitars. Quick reality check. Meanwhile, across town, AM radio is still asking for short, tidy hooks. But the strip is changing. Kids want a head trip that tells the truth about the time. War, protest, curfews, beauty, danger. The Doors speak that language, slow, dark, seductive. The click moment. Break on through to the other side. Lands as a mission statement, Latin-tinged rhythm, urgent poetry, no wasted bar. Then comes the bet that shouldn't work, Light My Fire, a 7-minute ceremony with an instrumental middle that refuses to hurry. The single gets trimmed for radio, but the album cut wins the argument. Audiences want the spell, not just the spark. By July 1967, it's number one. The 3-minute rule has a hole in it now. Hold that sound in your head. Now add this influence. Because the band built itself on film logic, the songs behave like scenes, establishing shot, organ drone, reveal, voice, tracking shot, guitar figures, hard cut, drum accents, long take, solo. It's not just music, it's cinema for the ears. The world before them, the pieces before the legend, merged. A city under pressure, an industry addicted to safe bets, and a generation hungry for something beautiful and a little dangerous. 4 musicians who combine poetry, jazz touch, modal color, and organ gravity into a living, breathing pulse. That is the birth of the sound. If a band can bend radio and turn clubs into rituals, what happens when the frontman stops being a singer and becomes a poet provocateur on national TV? Chapter 2, the poet as rock star, the theater, the scandals, and the line they chose to cross. In the summer light of Venice Beach, two film school kids compare notebooks. One writes like a poet who dreams in images. The other hears harmony in the way waves come and go. Jim Morrison, Ray Manzarek. The meeting isn't fireworks, it's alignment. Jim has fragments. The day destroys the night. And Ray hears not just a melody, but a method. Add Robbie Krieger, the quiet guitarist who brought flamenco and modal color. Add John Densmore, a drummer who knows jazz restraint and dynamic tension. The lineup locks, the temperature rises. How they collide, the human click. Before the myth, they're a hustling club band playing the London fog on the strip. Long sets, thin crowds, the night manager keeping score by drink sales. It's here they learn the trick that will define them. Stretch time without losing the room. They test songs like engineers, pulse first, image second, explosion last. Morrison discovers that silence, a pause, a stare, controls a room better than volume. Manzarek works both keyboards at once. Krieger threads minor mode phrases through Ray's drones. Densmore edits with cymbal splashes like jump cuts. First shockwave the moment the room tilts. One night, the band unfolds a new piece. The organ rises and won't resolve. The guitar curls like smoke. Morrison leans into the mic, not singing yet, telling. The staff stops wiping glasses. Strangers step closer. The song is the end. No tidy chorus, no radio math, just a spell. After that night, the room tilted. The first time they played it end to end, people stopped talking. It didn't sound like a new act. It sounded like a weapon. Freeze the frame. Listen to the sound one more time. Hear the low Dorian drone, the way it makes minutes feel like miles. That's the Doors' first innovation. Mood as the lead instrument. Breakout sequence from demo to detonation. They jump from the London fog to the Whiskey A Go-Go as the house band, trial by fire in front of industry eyes. The band can do 3 sets a night and never repeat the same arc. When the long pieces get too real, management gets nervous. But what scares club owners attracts a label built for left turns, Elektra Records. In the studio, producer Paul A. Rothchild and engineer Bruce Botnick treat tape like cinema. The debut single, Break On Through to the Other Side, doesn't explode on the charts, but it states doctrine, Latin snap in the drums, organ glare, Morrison's command. Then comes the real ignition, Light My Fire. The album cut runs over 7 minutes with a mid-song instrumental that behaves like a journey. Organ solo is scene change, guitar solo is chasing headlights. Radio wants a shorter cut. The band and label deliver an edit, but the spell is already out. In July 1967, the single hits #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. The American 3-minute rule buckles. Numbers don't tell it, this clip does. When they hit television, the music looks like it sounds. Calm, danger. Morrison hardly moves. The camera does the dancing. You can't tell if he's bored or plotting. That ambiguity becomes the brand. The first big stage, the first national headline, the TV crucible, September 17th, 1967, The Ed Sullivan Show. The producers ask for one change to a line in Light My Fire. Girl, we couldn't get much higher. Morrison hears the note and sings the line as written anyway. The song ends, the camera's cut, the myth multiplies. In 1967, that performance arrived and embarrassed anyone who said the scene was over. The kids heard the future, the papers heard a problem. And then the backlash landed. To a generation raised on neat choruses, the band's rituals look like trouble. Some critics call it pretentious, others call it dangerous. The more Morrison leans into poetry and provocation, the more the crowd leans in. That tension, kids versus critics, doesn't slow them, it powers them. Every front page scold becomes a flyer for the next show. Freeze the frame. Listen to that hook one more time. The organ isn't backing the singer, it's staring him down. Krieger's lines are questions, not exclamation points. Densmore rides the cymbal like rain on a windshield. Forward motion without rushing. Morrison floats and then strikes. This is the band's second innovation, performance as power exchange. The audience isn't consuming, it's participating. The detonation, the rise in full. With the debut album, The Doors' Jan 1967, opening the door, Strange Days arrives the same year, faster, stranger, and more studio-savvy, theremin textures, tape manipulation, carnival shadows. On tour, the long pieces turn rooms into ceremonies. The industry hasn't decided if they're the future or a problem. Teenagers already have. The Doors are post-chorus before rock knows that's an option. Quick reality check. Meanwhile, across town, other bands chase volume to get attention. The Doors chase space. Where rivals stack guitars, they subtract. Where rivals explain, they suggest. It reads as confidence. It plays as menace. Friction, the argument that writes the headlines. Fans, they're saying what the times feel like. Uncertain, electric, a little doomed. Critics, too theatrical, too literary, not real blues. Radio, we'll take the edit, not the Odyssey. The Doors, we made the Odyssey on purpose. Here's the piece almost everyone misses. The Rise wasn't just about a big single, it was about permission. After Light My Fire, programmers and promoters learned that a spellbinding middle could be good business. The industry recalibrated around a song that refused to hurry. That's the third innovation, bending commerce toward art, not the other way around. By the end of '67, they've gone from obscure house band to national lightning rod. The kids bring them questions, the press brings them tests, and the band answers with longer songs, stranger textures, and a stage show that feels less like entertainment and more like invocation. If The Rise proved a long, moody song could rule radio, the next move asked a harder question. How do you capture danger on tape again and again without killing it? Chapter 3, Reinventing Rock's Soundscape. Inside the studio with Rothschild and Botnick, where the Doors turn space, mode, and room tone into instruments and change how rock records are built. They weren't just selling music, they were selling permission. The Doors gave kids a uniform, an attitude, a way to be loud in public. But strip the tabloids away and the secret weapon is the swing of Densmore's hi-hat, the one-note bass drone under Manzarek's organ, the modal glide of Krieger's guitar, and a baritone that could read like poetry and land like weather. Pull any one of them out and the whole machine falls apart. The myth engine, how they looked, moved, and scared people. Black leather pants that looked like armor, sunglasses indoors, bare chest, concho belt, that slow-motion prowl to the mic. Morrison wasn't posing like a pop idol. He moved like someone half-dancer, half-prophet. Kids copied the hair, the boots, the stare. Parents called it indecent. Club owners called it risky. The underground press called it necessary. Rumors helped. The band fired from the Whiskey A Go-Go after Morrison's The End turned Oedipal on stage. Radio stations quietly banned the long version. Each no became a calling card. Culture shock, what they changed outside the songs. They didn't invent darkness in rock, but they made dark feel modern, slow, cinematic, seductive instead of just loud. FM progressive radio started giving longer tracks air, spaces where, when the music's over, could actually breathe. Zine covers and alt weeklies pushed Morrison as the Lizard King, and suddenly the frontman as poet wasn't a joke, it was a template. Dance floors learned a new tempo, less hop, more sway. On college campuses, the black-on-black look and that unfazed stage presence spread like slang. Energy nudge, solo the instrument, hear what it's doing under the vocal. Under break on through, solo the drums in your head. Densmore is borrowing a bossa nova idea on the ride and rim, then snapping it with rock accents. That bossa pulse is why the song drives without bludgeoning. Now solo, the organ in Light My Fire. Manzarek isn't padding chords, he's leading the melody with right hand, while the Fender Rhodes piano bass anchors a steady drone with the left. That drone gives the solos a road to run on. You feel motion even when the harmony barely moves. Now solo the guitar in Riders on the Storm. Krieger's lines don't dominate. They thread through the roads like headlights in rain. The restraint is the point. The controversy, why the papers panicked while kids leaned in. Network TV told them to shave a lyric. They didn't. Local officials said tone it down. They didn't. The Miami '69 clash turned into a national morality play. Critics wrote words like pretentious and indecent. Teenagers heard finally. That tension, kids versus critics, turned image into myth. Energy nudge. One studio trick you can't unhear after this. Riders on the Storm. Listen close and you'll hear a whispered second Morrison track tucked under the lead, almost like his ghost is following him. Add the recorded rain and thunder, and Botnick's mix puts you inside a storm, not in front of a band. After you notice the whisper, you'll always notice it, the craft, why it still hits. Riffs and harmony. Krieger leans on Dorian minor shapes. The harmony often stays put while melody and rhythm create drama. It's hypnotic rather than chord clever, which is why it still feels modern. Groove Logic Densmore plays jazz dynamics in a rock context. Ghost notes on snare, hi-hat that breathes, crescendos that feel like camera zooms. He leaves air where other drummers fill. Bass system live. The bassist is Manzarek's left hand, a minimalist, one or two note foundation that lets the organ speak and the vocal float. In the studio, they often bring in bass players, Doug Lubon, Larry Knechtel, Jerry Sheff, but keep the line simple so the mood, not chops, stays central. Vocal character, Morrison is close-mic'd, intimate, with plate reverb that feels like a room, not a tunnel. He can murmur a line like a secret and then break on a consonant so it hits your sternum. Lyric voice, not diary entries, symbols, cities, as characters, desire, and death as twin roads, because he writes in images. The songs don't expire when slang does. Producer, Hoyt engineer moves. Rothschild pushes takes until performance has danger. Botnick captures space. Sunset sounds, chambers, careful panning, reverb that carries but doesn't mush the attack. On LA Woman, when Rothschild bows out, Botnick co-pilots raw sessions cut in the band's rehearsal room, turning a bathroom into a vocal booth. The result, alive, unvarnished, still filmic, energy nudge. And that's why copycats never quite felt right. Bands copied the baritone or the organ or the leather, but without all four ingredients, the spell breaks. Take away Densmore's air, you get plod. Lose Krieger's modal color, you get bar blues. Mute Manzarek's lead organ logic, you get a singer with no horizon. Remove Morrison's image-driven lyrics, you get mood with nothing to haunt it. The culture ripple, formats, fashion, vocabulary. FM programmers learned that a long middle wasn't dead air. It was appointment listening. Underground Papers found a cover star who could carry both poetry and trouble. Fashion tilted darker, slower, cooler, less pep, more presence. Even the word doors from Huxley via Blake became shorthand for thresholds, altered states, new rooms, new selves, energy nudge. Freeze the frame, listen to the hook one more time. When the music's over, that final build is dynamics, is narrative, a swell, a stall, a strike. The band doesn't hurry the payoff, they earn it. That patience trains listeners for later worlds. Post-punks, drones, goths, cathedrals, alt-rocks, slow burns, member by member, why each is essential. Manzarek, the architect, without him, there's no keyboard as lid. No left-hand phantom bass, no church meets cabaret tone that frames the poetry. Krieger, the colorist. Without his modal lines and slide touch, the songs collapse into blues cliches. He supplies mystery without clutter. Densmore, the editor. Without his dynamic control, the long forms turn to mush. He plays decisions, not just beats. Morrison, the myth. Without the image and the lyric voice, you have a fine studio band. With him, you have a legend that sells the mood before a note is played. Why it still lands in 2025 of modern playlists are built on vibe. The Doors were vibe first before the word existed in music marketing. Minimal harmony, maximal space, a frontman who speaks in pictures, rhythm sections that suggest more than they state. It's the same grammar you hear in cinematic pop, dark wave, and prestige TV scoring. Hold the chord, move the air, let the image do the work. Energy nudge. One last studio detail you won't unhear. On Light My Fire, the solos aren't about showing off, they're about travel. Listen to how the organ solo steps outward and the guitar solo circles back inward. That's not random, it's structure. You feel like you left the room and then returned changed. Exactly what the lyric promises. The controversy is fuel for the craft. The more television tried to sand them down, the more the band doubled down on long forms and live danger. The myth did the marketing, but the craft kept tickets selling and records on turntables. That's why the catalog survives trend cycles. The image gets you in the door. The design of the music locks it. They've proved the image, survived the headlines, and built a sound that rewrites radio. But can you turn mood into albums that live as worlds? And can a city become part of the music's DNA? Chapter 4, Albums as Statements, LA as a Capital. How Strange Days, Morrison Hotel, and LA Woman turn records into places, and how the business learns to sell danger without killing it. And that a city itself Behind the posters was a price tag, sleep, blood, sanity. Fame fed the myth, but it also sharpened every knife. Grind math, the life that eats you. After the first explosions, the calendar got cruel. Fly-in radio hits, 3-set nights, dawn flights, hotel lobbies at noon, label meetings by 2, sound check at 5, lights at 8, interviews at midnight. Repeat until the edges blur. The band is expected to be brilliant on command and to deliver a new record like clocks deliver the hour. The machine doesn't care if the songs need time. We're going to sit with this for a second. Touring takes more than miles. It takes voice, temper, trust. Fights start sounding like policy. You can love someone and still be exhausted by them. Censorship and the slow burn of being watched. What was thrilling on club stages now face police, courts, and TV rules. After the Ed Sullivan flashpoint, more doors slammed than opened. The band felt the eyes, the microphones, the gotcha questions. The more they asked for freedom, the more the system added conditions. Listen to how the tempo feels heavier now. This is what pressure does to a groove. It drags. It turns a tight unit into 4 people guarding different borders. Human hits, the body keeps the score. Jim Morrison's drinking moved from ritual to routine to weight. The voice that could move like smoke now sometimes arrived hoarse. Shows swung between invocation and free fall. There were arrests, there were courtroom days, there were headlines written like verdicts. Families worried, friends formed camps. Inside the band, arguments weren't just about songs, they were about survival. This is the part fans don't put on t-shirts. Because he was a poet, people thought the darkness was a pose. Most nights it wasn't, it was work, and it took pieces, creative stalemates, when taste becomes a fight. In the studio, the bar kept rising. Producer Paul A. Rothschild, who once pushed them into danger, now pushed for takes until the nerve frayed. By the LA Woman era, Rothschild famously heard a track and called it cocktail music. The room went cold. He walked. Engineer Bruce Botnick stayed, moving the band into their rehearsal room, the Doors workshop, and turning a bathroom into a vocal booth. The sound got rawer, closer to the bone, but even that victory had a cost. It admitted that the old alliance was over. Money and myth both cut. Success pays, but it also divides. Who wrote what? Who saved what? Who broke what? Publishing splits and business calls 8 hours that should have gone to air, and keys and sticks and strings. The more famous the myth became, the harder it was to carry the man. We're gonna sit with this for a second. Every band tells itself a story. We're brothers. This is forever, but forever has paperwork, and paperwork has teeth. The incident that changed the chemistry, the Miami 1969 clash, didn't just bruise them, it rewired how the world met the band. Promoters got nervous, cities got strict. The more stages shrank, the more the legend grew unsupervised. A bad exchange for a group that needed the room to stretch and breathe. Courtrooms replaced green rooms. It's hard to write 11-minute ceremonies when your afternoons are depositions. The last charge, one more world built from pressure. And then the surprising thing, under all that weight, they made Morrison Hotel 1970 and LA Woman April 1971, records that sound lived in and present tense. Roadhouse Blues grins with a chipped tooth, riders on the storm, feels like a prophecy you can hear raining. The craft held when the scaffolding did not. That's the magician's trick and the tragedy. The art got clearer as the man got tired. Listen to the tempo, heavier but deeper. The band leans into blues not as retreat but as report. Here's the speed we can live at without breaking. The drums breathe, the organ holds, the guitar threads, the voice haunts. The end that isn't a fade. In 1971, Morrison steps away after the sessions and goes to Paris looking for breath, pages, and distance. On July 3rd, 1971, he is gone. No spectacle, no encore. Just a door closing in a city that understands ghosts. Most acts fade. The Doors didn't fade. They detonated. That's why the legend froze young instead of growing safe. We're going to sit with this for a second. Take the voice out of this machine, and the remaining parts are still excellent. But the chemistry that made the spell, that's not a part you can buy. It's a reaction you can't repeat. Aftershock. The name continues. The center does not. The band releases music without Morrison. There are good moments, brave moments, but even they would tell you something essential had left the room. Audiences could feel it. Without the poet, the organ is a light, not a lighthouse. Without the image, the long forms are songs, not rituals. The cost counted, exhaustion, trials, addiction, friendships thinned by business. A producer's walkout. A final album cut with a bathroom for a vocal booth and a storm inside the song. If you want the math, miles and money. If you want the truth, nerves and nights. One last slow breath. This chapter isn't here to punish a memory. It's here because the risk that made the music also made the edge. You can't tell the story of the rise without naming the bill. A door closed in Paris, but the sound didn't stop. It slipped into basements, clubs, radio formats, and films for decades after. So the real test is this: what did the world do with the blueprint once the architect was gone? Chapter 5, The Long Shadow. From punk to goth to alt, the afterlife of influence, the songs of cinema, and why the spell still works when the needle drops today. Before the Doors, radio's darkness was mostly volume and attitude. After the Doors, everyone chased mood, baritone gravity, minor mode hypnosis, words that felt like film. Even artists who never learned the name are living in the echo. Influence Map, who borrowed the look, the sound, the stance, spot the lineage, hear Iggy Pop fuse danger and poetry, catch Patti Smith chanting lines like incantations, trace the cathedral gloom of Joy Division and the nocturnal sway of The Cure, listen to Echo and the Bunnymen make baritone, plus shimmer feel like a seaside seance, feel the cult channel leather-clad ritual, hear modern dark wave and cinematic pop, hold a chord and let the air do the work. Energy nudge, spot the lineage, hear a modern act, hold one chord, let the drums breathe, and talk to you like a narrator. That's the blueprint. One sample you've heard 1,000 times. Hip-hop found their bones too. Jay-Z's Takeover 2001 flips the 5-to-1 riff into a marching order. Snoop Dogg X The Doors, Riders on the Storm 2004 reframes the rain-soaked mantra for a new era. And on the cinema side, The End in Apocalypse Now turned a rock song into a war dream. Once you hear mood as the lead instrument, you can't unhear it. Myth that travels. Image as operating system, the sunglasses, the slow prowl to the mic, the black on black, permission as fashion. Frontmen across decades borrowed the stillness, the stare, the idea that presence can be louder than a scream. Energy nudge, numbers don't tell it. Watch any baritone frontman plant his feet and let silence lean forward. That's the inheritance. Afterlife. How the flame stayed lit, surviving members kept the songs on stage. Ray Manzarek and Robbie Krieger touring together. Tribute nights, where singers step into the storm rather than imitate it. Reissues and vault drops kept adding rooms to the house. Studio remasters, early club recordings, concert films, think Live at the Bowl 68, and documentaries like When You're Strange, reminding new ears that the story isn't gossip, it's craft. Murals in Venice and playlists named for highways and storms do the rest. Why it still lands in 2025, what a new listener hears now. Today's ears are trained by prestige TV scores, alt R&B hush, and dark wave patience. The Doors were already doing that grammar, minimal harmony, maximal space, drums that breathe, not bludgeon, lyrics that paint images, not diary entries. Keys as a lead voice, not just glue, energy nudge. Freeze the frame, solo the hi-hat in your head during break on through. Feel that bossa lift under rock insistence? That micro groove is why it still feels new. Where to start? A 4-track gateway, Riders on the Storm at headphones, late night. Hear the whispered double, the rain, the road, the crystal ship. For the balladist who wants poetry without fog, L.A. Woman. For the highway band as engine, city as character, The End. For the long-form ritual, take the whole journey once. If you want albums, go The Doors, 1967, Morrison Hotel, 1970, L.A. Woman, 1971. That arc shows the leap from cinema psyche to lived-in blues without losing the spell. Why memory matters, not nostalgia. Instructions. Their catalog isn't a museum. It's an operating manual for anyone trying to make songs that feel like scenes. Hold the chord, trust the silence, let the drum air tell you when to speak. Write images, not explanations. That's why the Echo keeps inviting new singers, new producers, new kids with laptops and cheap mics to try the ritual again.